No, there we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being back for our keynote today. My name is Ahmad Sadeghi from Technical University Darmstadt, and I have the honor to introduce our next keynote, our industry keynote. As you know, the academic research is, of course, important, but what can you do with all the results in practice? And as you know, Cisco is one of the very well-known companies that currently has a lot to do with Internet of Things. That is a trend that's not going to stop in the next years. And many researchers in our community are interested to work with companies like Cisco. My experience with Cisco and also other US companies, especially Cisco, is that there are people in this company who really like research. They don't do it for just saying, okay, we just funded some university in US and we are all happy. No, they take it for serious, and this is what really impressed me. So I really wanted to have somebody from Cisco with a big picture in his mind, somebody who has lots of experience and can tell you as academia where to put your results, somebody that has management aspects, and this is the vice president of Cisco, who is overseeing the aspect of security, and that is Greg Akers. And I'm really, really happy that he accepted our, I mentioned it again, our invitation, because he's a very busy man, and I was very surprised, and many others as well, so we are very honored to have him here. So I will give the stage to him, but please note that he's still today here, and if you have any questions, you can ask him personally. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you very much. I am very honored to be here, and I would tell you a story about why I am here. I started this research program at Cisco about 2 years ago. And after the first year of work we had done, I looked at who we had given grants to, and it was all U.S. universities. I looked at my team and I said, clearly the U.S. is not the only place good quality cyber research is being done. I said, you have to, by the end of the next year, come back and have engagements in both Europe and in Asia. And so they came to me when Ahmad made the request for me to visit, and they said, okay, Greg, put your money where your mouth is. Get on a plane and go talk to the people in Asia about our research program. So I said, okay, that's fine, I'll do that. And by way of introduction, I have been at Cisco for a long time, almost 24 years. I kid and say that I actually came with the furniture. But I've been around for a long time. I've seen it grow and change. And I used to tell John Chambers, probably 15 years ago, this cyber stuff, you're going to care about it one of these days. Well, guess what? Now everybody does. And to my detriment, I've tried to retire 3 times, and John Chambers keeps saying, no, you're not done. You have to stay. So a couple of years ago, he and our chief security officer, whom I hired, came to me and said, you know, Greg, we need to think about how we're advancing the state of the art in cybersecurity. And we don't think our focus in other research areas is getting us to where we need to go. Here, take some money and some people and go out and build a research program. So that's how this whole thing started. I would tell you guys that it's been a wonderful couple of years, but the thing that has shocked me is that the world over realizes that the impediment to technology innovation and the technology deployment that we see as a part of IoT is largely going to be based upon whether or not we get the security thing right. And in fact, that's one of the things that I would tell you right now that I hear from every part of Cisco as we talk about growth in IoT. They say, but how are we going to manage this from a security standpoint? And the answer is we're still figuring it out. We don't know. And that's why I'm here to talk to you guys today, is that I want help. I'm here to talk to you about the things we care about, how we think about them, and most importantly, to have you think about them with us. And I'd like, for the result of this conversation, for you to engage my team to come back and look at the things that we're looking for from a research standpoint and engage with us and find ways to work with us. So the obligatory slide that you see everybody have is the one that says IoT is big. It's really big, and it's going to get bigger. That's not something that anyone would argue with. But the one thing that's on this chart that I did want to spend a couple of minutes pointing out is that in the upper right-hand corner, there's a connotation about artificial intelligence, and machine learning is what it's implied to mean, or what we're calling in our world the cognition of everything. And I tell you guys that one of the things I spend a lot of time inside Cisco doing and talking about is talking with our people that are building Cisco products, that are building infrastructure inside Cisco, and are building things that are going to be used by the company as well as by our customers. And they're all thinking and talking about how we bring cognition to the world of IoT, how we bring machine learning and artificial intelligence to the world of IoT, and what the network can do to enable that and protect it. And that's the other thing I would like to point out to you guys too, is I spend a lot of time talking with those people, and I look at them and I say, how do you know your machine learning systems have the integrity in them that they need? And they look at me like I've got 3 heads. And I said, it's a system. Bad guys will realize over time that if you're making a bet on using a system of cognition to get a result, and if the bad guys don't want you to get the result, i.e. to find them, they're going to start trying to tamper with those systems. And you have to think about how you protect the cognition of the things that are attached to the network, just as you do the devices of the network itself. So in our world, business and security and technology are ever changing. And this is an indication of the things that we think about in terms of what we see changing day in and day out. We think that the world of IoT is just going to continue to burgeon. I haven't had a discussion with anyone in any part of the world over the course of the last 5 years that we haven't spent some time talking about IoT. Now, the one thing I would tell you, I'm going to tell you a personal experience about my road of working down in the IoT space, is that about 2005 timeframe, I started an initiative within Cisco to put a Cisco router on race cars. US sanctioned race environments, NASCAR and the Indy Racing League, I deployed Cisco routers on, and I actually started down the road with Formula One. And the idea was that the router on the device would act as an aggregation point for all the data, telemetry, and sensor information on the car that could be then sent back to the engineers so that they could optimize the use of the car. Guess what, guys? We're doing that in many places today in other parts of IoT. When I started this project in 2005, I took it to John Chambers and I said, this is the wave of the future. He kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But what I learned out of that is we were just early to the marketplace with what we were doing. Now, the project, in my estimation, didn't go as far as it should have, but it ended up in a position over time that many of the things we learned from that project are the things that we're using and learning about today in IoT again. So we believe that IoT is going to be here to stay in all parts of business. We believe that we're going to be transitioning services from premises-based services and wherever we can to cloud-based services. Now, one would argue that there are some cloud-based services that you cannot replace with, you can't replace premises services with, and I would agree with you. There are some places, especially in some Defense Department types of applications and other very close hold applications where they're not going to allow you to move their data from premises locations to the cloud. But in most other places in OT types of environments, cloud services are going to prevail. We believe that the sharing economy of data is going to pervade everything. And again, I mentioned earlier that the important thing is that everything will have cognition. Everything will be able to think and act and reason. We also believe that security is going to change. We're moving away from perimeter-based security to core-based security, and security as a function of everything that goes on in the network. Dare I say the heresy that the day of the firewall as a perimeter protection device, the IPS, IDS as a perimeter protection device, and even signature-based host malware detection and mitigation capabilities are probably short-lived. Over time, those services will be replaced with services that will be enabled by the core, by the connectivity that the IoT device actually engages with. There will also be a movement away from protecting just infrastructure and protecting devices to protecting data. Now, the other thing I should mention to you too is I'm part of inside of Cisco, what's called the Security and Trust Organization. This is where the security apparatus for the company lives, security protections for trust systems live, privacy lives, and things like trustworthy systems for the products we build live. So one of the things that we're going to start talking about more is not how do we protect the devices, but how do we protect the data assets of the company. The next thing is we're going to move away from just monitoring infrastructure, looking at screens and seeing when things say that something's going wrong, to looking at when we see bad behavior on the network. And I've seen many of the presentations here at the conference begin to start talking about that. Not talking about detecting malfeasance on the device, but detecting the behavior that's causing the device not to behave the way it should, and then having the network respond in a way that mitigates that risk. The other thing we believe is that we will be dealing with attacks that are beyond the things we know about today. Denial of service, I'm sure, will be with us. And you can all tell me that the IoT activity of the Murrah attack was a wake-up call back several months ago, and I would agree with you. But at the end of the day, I think that's not the kind of behavioral malfeasance we're going to be looking for. We're going to be looking for devices and aggregations of things that are not behaving the way that they're supposed to. We're going to be looking at things that are not the kinds of attacks we deal with today. And we need systems and help to be able to figure out how to do that. We'll worry about weaponization of devices. I don't think we're going to be talking about malware in the future. I think we're going to be talking about malicious applications in the IoT environment, where those malicious applications will replace the idea of malware, and they'll cause behaviors in the IoT environment that we don't want, and we have to detect those and mitigate them. We also have to be talking about the threat behind insiders and social attacks that we've never thought about before. And again, protecting ourselves not against the activity, but protecting ourselves against the outcome of the activity. Now, Cisco has developed a program that I wanted to share with you guys. This is something that we've had in place at Cisco for about a year. It's called the Country Digitization Accelerator. And what this is a program where Cisco executives go into the countries that might be engaging in digitization activities and actually beginning to build, based upon digitization in their environment, new economic ideas, new social provisions, new things that we might get benefit from technology that as a country that they have never seen before. And Cisco's program actually involves 3 phases. They care about engaging academia, government, and industry in the 3 ways that they can actually come together and enable digitization in the country. Now, this program has actually gone through many different stages over the last year or so, and it's actually now engaged, I believe, about 15 different countries worldwide. In a handful of those countries, we've actually gone in with the research community and we've said, you know what? We believe there's research opportunities in the countries where we can engage academia to solve the security problems in the countries around digitization. And in fact, in 3 or 4 countries that I'm aware of now, we actually have gone in and granted research grants into those digitization countries so that we can further the needs of the country within their research community as well. I wanted to share with you that one of the key reasons we're doing this is we believe that by digitally enabling these countries, we can let these countries begin to enable themselves in ways they have never thought about before. GDP growth is always one of the things they talk about. Safety and security in the cyber-physical sense is always one of the things they talk about. And then the other thing they talk about is just services and benefits to citizenry. Now, one of the things I would tell you guys, and I'm very proud about this program, is that the former CEO of Cisco, who is now the chairman of Cisco, John Chambers, is actually personally leading this digitization acceleration initiative inside the company. And I actually meet with John still every couple of months, and I would tell you that he believes that in Cisco's history, what he's working on in this area is probably the most important market transition that we've ever seen. I've been with the company for, like I said, 24 years. And in my time, every 3, 4, 5 years, we see a significant market transition. The first one was back in the days when we moved from routing to switching. We moved from classic data center environments to IP-enabled data center environments, voice video data integration, collaboration, and now we're on to IoT. But John would tell you that the most important opportunity that the company has ever had during one of these transitions is in this IoT transition space. And that's why he's committed his time and effort, now that he's retired as the CEO, to drive this initiative. So I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about some of the structural, architectural types of things we're dealing with in the IoT space. And somebody saw the original slide that was up there and said, well, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be an IoT talk. Well, there's a lot of IoT in it, but it's not specifically an IoT talk. But what I wanted to share with you was Cisco sees a transition of architectures moving through connected things, through connected services, and ultimately to connected ecosystems where you bring applications and analytics together along with connectivity and access to provide the benefit from a digital standpoint. And ultimately, we can provide services like these in the connected spaces where we can provide these to the people that are going to benefit from them. Things like safety and compliance, supply chain, fleet operation, predictive maintenance, and asset management. And I apologize, guys. I've been traveling for about 2 months, so I've caught a cold. I'm going to have to take a little bit of water. But the reason for me sharing with you this is I wanted to get onto this architectural slide. So this is actually Cisco's view of what a smart and connected city would look like architecturally. And what you see is a host of things that are street sensors. These are the things that are actually going to gather or disseminate data at the street level in the city. And it's connected to a digitally enabled network. And you ask me, what kind of network? It doesn't matter. Whatever's there is the network that you will use to communicate upon. Then we'll have access to cloud-based applications through public, private, WAN types of infrastructures, and connecting onto a single homogeneous data platform. And by homogeneous, I don't mean that it's necessarily all Hadoop or all Oracle or all whatever. It'll be an interconnected data platform that all services and applications will access via common APIs. The idea here being that the most important thing is to aggregate the data so they can be used across services in ways that we've never thought about before. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is that the solutions network, the solutions architecture is going to be based upon what Cisco believes is a very rich network, a network where services can be provided at the higher level, but there are services embedded in the network that are there for things like security and trust, as well as for aggregation of other types of data at a common level. So the things that we think are going to be unique at that networking layer are things like sensor and device connectivity, whatever it might be, IT and OT types of operations over IP, IPv6. Security and quality of services will be enabled there. Fog and distributed architecture, management, provisioning, and new business models will be enabled there. So with all these things at Cisco's feet, how do we deal with it? So we asked the team to go off and come up with a strategy. Well, the problem was technical advances were going to come at a pace, and threats were going to come at a pace faster than we could deal with. What do we do to get beyond that? We said, you know what? We can't solve this alone. So we're going to go off and we're going to work with academia and government across the world to begin to work on these hard problems. And I would tell you guys, when I talk to my research team about these engagements, I tell them, I don't want you to think about solving the problem that's 18 months ahead of us. Cisco has generally done that over the years. Cisco is a very sales-driven corporation. We don't generally think beyond a year and a half, 2 or 3 years out. But when I talked to my research team, I said, let's not solve those problems. Those problems will be solved by market transitions that we'll deal with as a part of the company. Let's work on the problems that are 5, 10, 15 years out in the use of technology. And that's what brings us to the research community. We think that's where the best chance across the world is for us to get a handle on what we need to be doing in the years ahead. And to do that, we're looking for these kinds of goals to be realized. We're looking for new ideas, things that we've never thought about before. We want to learn from things that we've succeeded at and also failed at. And that's the other thing you're going to hear me talk about a fair bit during this discussion is there's a philosophy that I've shared with my team is that in our research world, failure is not to be condemned. Failure is a learning. And in fact, I celebrate failure with them as long as they could tell me what they learned from the failure. And that's okay, that's acceptable. That's what we want to be able to do. We want to understand what surprises might be laying out there ahead of us and what we might be able to do to engage people that would help us understand them and learn from them. And I would say again, because of the nature of the company, this is something that's been hard for the company to do over the years. But with working with academia and working with industry and working with government, we believe that we can avoid strategic surprise. And at least if we are surprised, we've got ready partnerships and ready engagements to go off and deal with them. We want to be able to hypothesize, test our hypothesis, and understand whether or not we've got something we've got to go work on or do differently. We want to be able to build practical applications in products, and we want to have objective measures of success. We want to be able to fuel innovation. That's something that I would tell you that I've never seen as such a high focus across Cisco as a company since I've been there, is the attention that they're paying across the company to new innovation and new ideas. The idea that anything we're doing today is not the way we should be thinking about or doing in the future. It should always be ready to be modified and looked at in a different way and looking at an innovative way to solve a problem. We want to not worry about who owns intellectual property. So one of the things I would tell you guys is that as researchers, oftentimes you get involved with commercial discussions about, well, if I come up with something, who gets the intellectual property? Is it the university, or is it the funding of the research, or is it shared, or what happens? In our environment, our primary objective is to create joint intellectual property that can be used to solve problems the world over. Generally, I look at good outputs of research as being things like open source material to be able to deal with that across the world. Whomever might want to use it, Cisco, a competitor, it doesn't matter. And I have to tell you, that's one of the things I've been stricken by this conference, is in the presentations I've seen, in most cases, the code has been contributed to GitHub as open source for other people to use. That's a great outcome from our perspective. We'd like to see more and more of that kind of research work being done. We also want to be able to get beyond the idea that if we didn't invent it inside Cisco, it's not any good. We've had that problem in the past. And we believe by engaging researchers around the world, we can do that. We have a philosophy that says we're going to move from discovery through define, evaluate, prototype, test, iterate, and do it again. And that's going to produce the results. Now, on this slide, I want to take just a minute and share with you a little bit about what the picture in the upper right-hand corner is. Does anybody recognize what that is? It's the Wright Brothers flyer. Yes, thank you. I live about 3 miles away from where this picture was taken. And contrary to what my team has told other people, I'm not one of the people at the edge of the Wright Brothers flyer. But when I started this team, I sat down with the team and I said, let's think about the turn of the century in the early 1900s and what the Wright brothers must have been thinking about in terms of the way they were seeing the world changing and evolving. And I know there's arguments across the world about who the first to fly were. I'm not going to get involved in that. But what I wanted to share with you is there's a couple of pictures in here about the Wright brothers in this deck. And the purpose for this is not to claim high ground on the innovation, but to think about what it must have been like to live at a time when things that we were discussing in aviation at the time had never been discussed. I think we're seeing the same thing at this point in time in the use of IoT across the world. I want to point out that we've got the mentality that says, you know what, we want to be able to be radical, think about things completely different, and never assume that anything we're doing today is what we should be doing in the future. The other thing is we're going to look for market drivers. We're going to look for times when the market is telling us something and we need to react to it. We need to leverage everything that we do inside Cisco in the innovation space so that we can leverage it to the benefit of the outcome of the research. And by that, I mean, I do have a program that I can grant money to researchers to work together with us on particular areas of interest. I have ways to donate equipment. I have ways to donate time and people's engagement with PIs. But we want to leverage it in a way that we're doing it thoughtfully and consistently through the things that we care about. So this chart here, I hesitate to put this up, but I'm going to do it because it's always out of date. This is the current research program that we run. And you'll see there's actually 7 different focus areas up here. And there are PIs and engagements over on the right-hand side. Now, I will say, if you look very closely at that list on the right-hand side, and I realize it's a bit of an eye chart, I apologize for that, you'll see a handful of international institutions, but largely a US-centric group there. And that's exactly why we're here, is to talk about how we expand the focus and bring more people into this discussion. Now, the work that we're doing in these areas on the left-hand side is generally consistent. The one that I did want to point a little bit of time, or take a little bit of time to point out to you is the one in the middle, the compute advances. One of the things that I started this organization, that they told me to think about was, Greg, this thing called quantum computing is going to cause us to have to rethink cryptography. Yep, I understand that. And they said, we don't have a company strategy around how to deal with that. Now, many of you probably went to the tutorial yesterday afternoon and heard a lot of different approaches. And I'm proud to say that those things that I heard in that presentation before I had to leave actually were very consistent with the things I've heard from the researchers at Cisco. And in fact, I've had researchers at Cisco in my team contribute things into IETF that we think are quantum resistant cryptography. But what Cisco's got to deal with is the fact that we've got an installed base the world over that does not change networking gear out very often. You guys heard me talking about this at the end of the keynote yesterday when I talked about the problem with the network gear transitions from vulnerability standpoint. And what we're dealing with is the fact that we know that we need to move forward with something that is going to ultimately be quantum resistant. But we haven't gotten anything that we really believe that we can embed in our products, in our services today that's going to get us where we need to go. And we're engaging on a number of fronts to deal with this. Now, I will tell you guys, I'm gonna let a little bit of a cat out of the bag here. I'm working with one of the researchers up here, and I saw a paper from her just last week that said to me, au contraire, RSA may not be dead from a quantum resistant standpoint. And that paper should be posted online sometime this week. And I won't give you the details. I don't want to tell the rest of the story, but really, really big RSA keys might be quantum resistant. So it's a very interesting discussion, but that's the kind of thing that motivated Cisco to go down this road. And I would tell you guys that we're always looking to modify and expand this area. In fact, for this coming calendar year, these are the new areas that we're actually out there looking at. You'll see a large focus on threat, large focus on advanced cryptography, which is where the quantum resistant crypto comes in. We're also looking for lightweight crypto. We want to be able to put crypto indigenously on some of these IoT devices that have very limited compute and power types of profiles to be able to use them, so that we can actually find a way to protect those devices. And where we can't protect them on themselves, we look for ways for the network to help them. The other thing we're looking at is, of course, always platform and software security and integrity and verification. And these are things that we think that we're going to find research relationships this year to go off and look at. So if you guys are looking to engage Cisco on a security research project, this is your roadmap of things to think about how you might be able to help us for this calendar year, okay? And I see a lot of you out there taking pictures. I think the conference proceedings have my slides in them. If not, if anybody wants them, you're welcome to get them from Ahmad or from whomever else, or just send me an email. I'm very easy to get at Cisco. It's just my last name, Akers, A-K-E-R-S, @cisco.com. Send me a note and I'll send you the slide. And then I talked about this just a little bit earlier. One of the things I tell my team always is failure is acceptable. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And in fact, in the first 25 grants that we let, there was 3 that we declared to be failures. And I said, that's fine. We didn't continue the relationships. And I have to be honest with you, there was a couple of them that were some pretty well-known research engagements that they were very put off that we didn't continue the engagement because we didn't get where we wanted to go. I said, it's okay. We learned something out of it. That's an acceptable outcome. And what we found was that if we're not trying hard enough, we don't see any failure. In fact, I wanted to refer to Jane McGonigal's World Innovation Forum video. I'd encourage you guys to go look at that. And she stood up and said, you know what? The most successful gamers in the world out there actually find that they fail about 85% of the time. Now, I tell my team, I'm not sure that 85% is an acceptable failure rate, but I'm not going to prescribe that acceptable failure rate. I just want to see some failure, an acknowledgement of the failure. I've been involved with other research organizations who've had relationships that have lasted for years. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at one of the U.S. government research facilities a long time ago. I was walking around the research organization, and I walked by an office that was cluttered. There was a desk in the center. There were publications all over the place, a little bit of equipment in it, a single light bulb hung from a cord above the desk. And I said to the research director who I was with, "Who is that and what does he do?" He looked at me and goes, "I don't know, but he's been here for 20 years. It must be important." I said, you know, after 20 years, if you don't know it and it hasn't produced a result, maybe it's time to kill it and move on and declare victory. Of course, that was heresy to them. They didn't think about it that way. So the other thing is we want to drive discovery to practice. And by that, I mean, you know, bring practical implementations of things into the environment. Now, I want to talk about this tech transfer on 2 feet idea. What we found is that there are usually graduate students that work on many of these research projects that understand them very well, and they'd love to see them implemented in commercial environments. So what we've done is we've brought those people into the company as research interns. We've let them sit by the product development people or the infrastructure people or whomever else might take advantage of the technology and help those people work with the technology that they developed as a part of the research project, bring it into the environment. In many cases, what they're doing in the 6 cases where we've had this happen is we've actually brought open source code into the company and implemented it in the products. So we believe that research is a collaboration. It's a means by which we can develop lasting relationships. And by that I mean, even in those cases where we failed in certain research environments, we've still maintained our relationships. And we would never dismiss anyone as not being a person that we would go back and have an engagement with in the future if we thought the benefit was there. So one of the things I tell you guys is that as we've looked at the engagements across the spectrum of the grants we've done, we believe those are partnerships, and Cisco has a philosophy that we partner for life. We want to be there to work with people that are doing things that are important and useful and meaningful to us over time, no matter what it is. And I have to tell you, one of the things that's been very gratifying to me over the last couple of days as I've watched the presentations is I've seen PIs, not directly, but either referenced or attributed to in the talks of people that I know that we've given money to over the years. And I'm pretty excited about that. We've got a number of places where we build teams that go to work on specific problems. Teams that would be very happy to have industry participants to be there to give them practical views of how they might be using their technology. The other thing I can tell you that's important too is Cisco, as a company of 75,000 people, generates a lot of collateral information, intellectual property, data, things that as a big company could be very useful to researchers to do research on. One of the things in the security world that we find is that we're a pretty big organization that generates a lot of data that we use for our own internal operations. And those data sets can be useful to us as long as we do the appropriate way, appropriately handle them, anonymize them, and that sort of thing. But we can bring them to the research environment and do work with them in ways that are actually very meaningful. We want to promote education too. We spend a lot of time sending our people out to talk, just like these kinds of situations, or bringing people from the outside into the company to talk to the other people in the company about what they're doing. I actually have 2 people on my staff. They're adjunct professors at university in the United States. One of them is at Wake Forest, and one of them is at University of Tennessee. So we've gotten a number of cases where we've been able to actually send our people out into academia to teach and to engage with people about what it is in the world we're doing. So how do we measure success through all this? Well, it's really not one thing. It's a number of things. And success doesn't mean just the airplane flew. I've tried to already, instill that in the idea here is that we're trying to worry about what we learn and what we're able to get as a benefit from the relationship. We care about ideation and tech transfer. And we think the best way to do tech transfer is actually to use that idea of tech transfer on 2 feet, where people come to the company and bring the technology with them and help instill it in what it is we're doing. We think failure is something that we're going to continue to embrace and be proud of, but we also believe that it's important to bring our customers and our partners into the discussion as well. We think we can also influence the industry. We think that in cases, let me give you one example. In cases where the industry may be going one way as opposed to the way we think is the right way to go, by research relationships, we can actually influence that sort of thing. I'll give you a quick example of that. About a year ago, there was a publication, I don't remember where it came from, it was within the US, that said IKE v2 is not ever going to be quantum resistant, but because of the nature of IKE v1, and if I remember the way the story went, IKE v1 has a hash-based signature type of characteristic to it that inherently looks like it's quantum resistant. And I'm seeing heads nod right now, so I think I kind of got that right. But my team looked at that and said, oh my God, people are going to read this and rush back to using IKE v1 instead of IKE v2. And I said, well, my God, there's inherent flaws from a security posture standpoint in IKE v1. We don't want regressing back to IKE v1. As a matter of fact, I had been on a kick at one point to try to deprecate IKE v1 from the code base inside of Cisco because it was so weak in some places. And one of my cryptographers came to me and said, we could fix IKE v2 to be quantum resistant, just like IKE v1, Greg. And we went to IETF, and we got it admitted into the IETF proceedings, and we actually have a v2 standard modification that's going to present v2 in a way that we believe is quantum resistant. So that kind of industry influence becomes very important. It's something that we think that will be very important to the industry and to the adoption of the technology as we move forward. The other thing is just basic education. So you guys are all part of the academic world. You understand the value of education. That's not true the industry over, but we think because of our engagement with academia and our engagement with the research institutions across the globe, we can reinforce this importance of education across the globe as well. We also believe at the end of the day, some people will end up at Cisco because of our research engagements. I have a young man that came out of Colorado State that is my go-to person for machine learning. And I tell you what, I keep that young man busy. I don't know enough about machine learning, but every time I turn around, somebody's asking me about machine learning, and I give him to Blake. And I tell you what, he has become a wonderful asset to my team, and he was a recruit out of a research relationship at Cisco. So it's a very important asset to our company to bring people in. One of the things that John Chambers told me years ago, he looked at me when I was working in the research, another part of the research world inside Cisco, and he said, you know, Greg, we're never going to build a brick and mortar research facility. We're never going to have a Watson research facility or an AT&T type research facility like they had at Bell Labs. That's not us. That's not the way Cisco works. But we have to have these relationships and we have to have this capability and capacity. And it's up to you to figure out a different way to do it. And we believe this type of a model is exactly the way to do it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close. I think I've got about 20 minutes left. Is that right? And I'll answer questions from anybody. I'll answer anything. The only thing I'll warn you guys is I don't see well. So if I'm not paying attention to somebody, you're trying to ask me a question, wave your hand or throw something at me, that's fair game.
Don't worry, I will point you out.
Okay. You want my mic? Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So my name is Marwan Al-Zaruni from the Bioelectronics Security Center. Over here, actually. This.
Yeah, great.
Okay, thank you. I told you I can't see.
So there's always talk about quantum resistance versus post-quantum cryptography. What do you think is a better approach? Because a lot of people are shifting algorithms to post-quantum, thinking that quantum resistance is just, will suffice for only a short period of time, and maybe we should think beyond that.
So I'll refer back to the tutorial from yesterday, and my friend down here from Cisco is going to laugh. Every time I get a quantum computing question on stage, I usually end up talking for a very long time. I'll try to make the conversation very concise. I think you made a very good point. I don't think we understand the implications in many ways about what quantum computers will mean to the world. I think they'll solve problems we haven't even imagined yet. I think there's things that we'll learn from them over time that'll change the world in profound ways. So I think your assertion is valid. However, the cryptographers tell me that there is a way to look at cryptography that we could prove that the cryptography we enable to be quantum resistant provides what are called NP-complete or NP-hard solutions, so that in fact the classic Shor's or Grover's algorithms can't be used to factor in ways that could crack the crypto. So I think quantum resistance is important to us to understand that we need to get to a point that we can stand up in the face of a quantum computer and say, our data is protected. And we could prove mathematically through NP-hard analysis that this is in fact true. So, you know, the other place I talk about with people about quantum computers is we struggle with quantum computers in the world of, or thinking about it in the world of cryptography, but no one has really taken the time to think about what it might mean in the world of analytics. You know, what about a real quantum device that's applied to things like machine learning? That'll profoundly change the world, in my opinion. Did that answer your question? Okay. And it was Jeff, it was under 15 minutes.
Any other question?
My staff laughs at me. They go, you know, you're an old tech guy. Anytime anybody asks you anything technical, you just jump all over it and spend too much time. And I usually scare them too.
So a question from here.
Georgia Tech. I guess, Greg, you talked about academia, industry, and government, I guess. So one way I think fairly effective for tech transfer is the people who invent in academia actually commercialize, create companies. Can you comment on that?
Yes.
You sort of implied that government give us what you invent and we'll build it.
No, I didn't mean to imply that. And I know GTRU very well. I've done some work with GTRU. And I know that they've commercialized things as well. What we found is the easiest way to overcome the problem inside of our company that we called earlier on the slides, the not invented here problem, is for the researcher and the developers to work together to enable the technology inside of the product. And I don't mean to imply we're just asking you to give it to us. We're asking you to work with us on enabling it inside of the technology. Does that make sense? Okay.
Questions?
Anyone else?
Yes. Also same direction.
Shahid from Research Institutes of Sweden. My question is a little related to the last one. So you mentioned the collaboration between industry, academia, and governments. Is there any project right now going on in Cisco that covers these three together?
Yes. Industry, academia, and governments is going on right now in France, Italy, the UK.
And soon Germany.
And Germany, yes, I'm sorry. That was awful.
I hope.
Yes, it is. So there are several, and they're all rolled up under that CDA initiative I mentioned in the slides. So yes, there are, and we want to see more of that. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I've said to the people that are doing the work in the CDA environment is you shouldn't be engaging in an area where you have academic quality without having a part of that discussion centered around security research.
Other questions? A question here.
So again, relevant to the same two questions. So what is it there for the industry? My name is Bushra Al-Bloushi. I am the Research and Innovation Manager in Dubai Electronic Security Center. So when you are saying you are involving academia, government, and industry, what is it there for the governments? Are you involving researchers from the government, or are you involving the business people from the government?
It's the business people from the government and researchers from academia in the countries.
Okay, and what about the intellectual property? Because you mentioned something about that.
Generally, we don't worry about the intellectual property ownership. We let the academic institution decide that. Our preference is to see the ultimate result being contributed to open source, so that anyone that's trying to build systems, especially around IoT, can take advantage of it.
So at the end of the research, I'm expecting that those projects or those solutions will be implemented with the collaborating government entity first, and then it will be open for others to benefit from.
Yes, exactly. Okay, you got the idea.
Thank you. Questions? Come on, guy. It's not very late. The only opportunity. It's still too early.
I will be around today and tomorrow, so corner me if you want. And you've got the email address. I'm very responsive on email.
Okay. If there is no other questions, and thanks a lot, Greg, for being here. Thank you very much. And the head of Cybersecurity Center at NYU has a present for you.
Oh, oh my.
This is something simple for you, Greg. Thank you for endorsing research, global research for cybersecurity and contributing to bridging the gap between industry, government, and research. We are happy to have you here.
Well, thank you so much.
I hope you remember Abu Dhabi. This is a bit of something Arabic from different places and Turkish at the same time. So thank you very much.
I'm very honored. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to comment?
No, wait. Oh, we don't have any babies here. Okay. Yes, would be very nice.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who, Greg, this
thank you
thing
so
is heavy.
Yes, please. We may need to figure a way to send it to me. I'm sure I can carry it back. Thank you.
Just give me the address.
We'll do
I
that.
think you should send it to him because this is heavy.
A bit of announcement. We will have a tour to our smart city testbed for our governmental partners. So join us. How are we? I hope you're in the crowd, so you can join us.
Actually, John Chambers serves on the board of it.
We're going now for the tour.
The one you just invested in?
Yeah, I'm at the center tour. So we'll take you. Perfect. Hi,
I'm here until Saturday.
David.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Nice to
He said he's going to mentor
Yes, we know. Don't worry.
So how do you pronounce your last name? Nakash.
He speaks Arabic.
You're Arabic. With David Park.
in a way I asked board meeting.
You want to Okay, we'll meet and we'll do the IoT component.
Dr.
Would you
Ahmed
like to join us? No, Ahmed Mushtaq is there. We can meet him there. So we'll go and just gather the crowd so we can. Huh? Yes. Gentlemen, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Would you like to join us for the tour? We're going for the center and the IoT components. Dr. Ahmed, I'd love to introduce you.
Greg, I want to introduce you to this is William A.
I know more than that.
Superstar.
Have it, here you go.
Yes. Are you looking in the I have Martin. I'm on an airplane. Okay. Very good. A lot of the Android ones are really expanding out to IoT. Is interested in this Yeah.
Nice to see you. I was reading your papers, following what you're doing. So I see you
I'll send you papers. Yeah. Maybe a lot of
Next time we should give it as enterprise.
Oh,
Really how you want to bet.
background.